Arrive and Thrive would like to begin by first acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land of which we recorded this podcast and extend our respect to elders, past, present, and emerging. Professor Ellen Connelly Taaffe, welcome to the Arrive and Thrive Career Podcast. How are you going?
Thank you, Tyler. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's my absolute pleasure. So please introduce yourself to all of our listeners, and what is it that you do, and what's, I suppose, the main focus point of your career at this particular point?
Sure. So I am a clinical associate professor at the Kellogg School of Management of Northwestern University. I'm also the director of women's leadership programming there. And outside of Kellogg, I sit on 3 boards and do some coaching and leadership advisory services. But my main focus is really teaching. I teach a leadership class called Personal Leadership Insights. I run the Women's Leadership Seminar Series. And as part of all that I've learned in doing that, I've written a book that comes out in October. So the book is called The Mirror Door: Break Through the Hidden Barrier That Locks Successful Women in Place.
Fantastic. We're super excited today because I think you're actually one of our first international guests in terms of because you're calling from the States, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, super exciting times. And also one of our first professors based in the States as well. So that's a double win for us. So
all right. That sounds good.
stoked to have you here. So talk to us a little bit about your career journey, because you have been in some significant leadership roles in your own career, and now it's almost like you're continuing that in a different light and kind of paying the lessons forward. If am I correct?
Yeah, that's right. So I had a corporate career. I worked for 25 years in big companies in the States. And I started in sales and moved into brand management. I worked for companies like PepsiCo and Royal Caribbean in the travel sector, and then Whirlpool Corporation. And following that, I ended up joining a small company. I had been their client when I was at Whirlpool, and I joined a boutique consulting firm where we focused on brand strategy and product development strategy. And I joined them when their owners were ready to retire and were going to sell the company. I was there as their president for 5 years. And then along the way, I joined some boards, and I found that I really wanted to help people with their careers and really step into what they really wanted and step into their leadership. And I joined Kellogg, my alma mater, where I got my MBA, and I started with the women's leadership program, eventually took on teaching this leadership class. And it has been this amazing, late in my career kind of thing where I get to know the students, I get to help them really define who they are and who they want to be. And along the way, we get to know each other really well, and I get the chance to stay in touch with them. So it's very satisfying, and I feel like I'm making a difference. And I also feel that with the women's leadership programming too. And I am the sponsor of the Women's Business Association, and all that I think is coming together and coming for me in this book, where I hope to get the message out even broader than what I'm able to impact at Kellogg.
Fantastic. I loved how you talked just at the start there about teaching your students about themselves, and then how they can also present that in a leadership context. That's something that we do in some of our workshops as well when it comes to that self-leadership piece, understanding your strengths, understanding your areas of development, how we go about communicating those. Can you talk to our listeners around why you think that's really important in terms of developing your first stage of leadership?
Yeah, I think that for today's time, that we need the hard and the soft skills. And so, in the past, I think the business world and many organizations was much more hierarchical, much more command and control. And I think that's really evolved with what works in business and what employees want to certainly you need some command and some control, but you need a lot more collaboration and compassion. And it's the combination of those things. People who are able to take care and take charge are the best leaders. And I think that strong leaders, or what I teach in my class, is that the best leaders understand themselves, understand the impact they have on others. They know what works for them and maybe where they get in their own way or what works against them. And with that, effectively create followership, to be able to motivate others and really tap into, as you said, like tapping into your own strengths, is one of the most important things in your career, and getting that kind of feedback to help you know where what you need to work on.
Mm.
So those are all the things that I teach in my class and I firmly believe in. So when I got back to Kellogg and heard about this class, I said, how can I teach it? It's the work that I believe in and the work that I've really been doing over my career as well.
Fantastic. I love that phrase you just said. Was it take care and then take charge? That's so cool.
Yeah, that's kind of my sign off,
Yep.
because I think it's that, I sign my books, or I sign, my email newsletter with that, because I think it's about doing both those things. I mean, don't we all want to work for leaders and work for organizations that do both of those things?
100%, 100%. And I think of the people that I've come across in my career journey, it's always the leader that I admire that has that empathy side, as well as that ability to make those tough decisions. And
Mhm.
it's funny we're talking about this because I was talking about it with a coaching client and slash member the other day, and it was like, they're looking at like leadership and management, and they're kind of in this management role at the moment, and it was like this conversation of being the difference between being liked and being respected. Can you share your insights on that? Because I often find that's a bit of a challenge that I think a lot of young leaders face, is like, instead of being the person that's liked in the room, it's like changing their shift to being a respected leader, because they do need to make those tough decisions. What's your take?
I think you're right that it is a shift, and part of it, there's one of the strategies that I identify in the book that makes us successful is to be other oriented. And a lot of times we've learned that growing up, and it can make us so strong, anticipating others' needs, and being the glue that holds the team together, being the peacemaker, and it makes us, we are liked because of that. And it's good to be liked. We
Mm.
like
Makes
that.
you feel
Everyone
good.
likes that. Yeah, it makes you feel good, and it becomes part of your identity. And I think that is more true for women, and we learn it early on. And so then we get into the workplace, and you're going to make decisions, or you need to make decisions that aren't popular with everyone, that aren't liked by everyone, and that can really cause some consternation and stress of, if you're overly worried on what will other people think, and will I sort of lose some of that identity, you might hold back from making those tough decisions. And so this idea of shifting towards what you really want is to be a respected leader, and there is people like you for that,
Mm.
not because you cave to them. And so, the way to sort of shift into respect is also to be able to explain your decisions, to certainly get input from others, but then be transparent about, I made this call because these circumstances led me to that, and here's why I'm willing to take that risk, I hear you on these other things, but I've elected to go in this direction because of these reasons.
Mm,
And while maybe some people might be disappointed, they trust in you that you weighed all the information and all the data, or I'm making this up here, but you've weighed what needed to be weighed, and you've been transparent about how you made and why you made the decision,
mm.
and you increase your respect. But you got to live with it. Not everyone's going to be happy all the time, and sometimes short term, I didn't really like that decision. You're making a decision for the good of the company, which in effect is good for the people too.
Yeah, well said. Well said. One of the key terms I felt that I really resonated when you were sharing that was that transparency piece. And I
Mhm.
feel that, and it'd be great to get your opinion on this, is that I personally feel that that has been more of an important value for leaders more recently when it comes to the workforce. But yeah, you've probably had a lot more experience in that space. Like, what's your take? Do you think that's always been a value, a core value for effective leaders, or your thoughts?
I agree with you. I think that it's increasingly important. Depends on the company if it's always
Sure.
been around, but I think on average, in that command and control hierarchy, it's there might have along with that been like, we're not going to ask questions as to why, we just follow along. And
Understand.
that's just not how many employees want to interact. They really want to understand, where is the company at, how are things getting decided, and they so often, I think, increasingly want to align their personal values with the values of the company. And that's why transparency is so important to understand, are we walking the talk?
Mm,
And I think people seek it out, and I think the best leaders give that transparency. It's one of the smartest things you can do, and it also holds your feet to the fire in the sense of, like, did you weigh all the full situation? Did you get input? And how are you weighing the circumstances to have made the best decision for what the company's goals are, what the company is, and for the future?
mm. This is getting a little philosophical, Ellen, from my thought process. Is I almost think like what you said before, and employees wanting to know and understand where the information's coming from, where they're currently at with certain decisions and things like that. Do you think that has stemmed from, I suppose, the society that we live in these days when it comes to like freedom of flow of information? People always like we like to understand what's going on, and we can generally find out information pretty easily with the internet, social media, the types of knowledge platforms that we have these days. Like, do you think that has been a cultural shift within the workplace as well?
I think that's part of it. I don't think it's all of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there is those circumstances where something is said publicly by a company leader, and there's more to it
Mm,
that is not out there. And so you see more, from whistleblowers to other people exposing, like, here's what's really going on. So that is true. But I also think that generationally and culturally, there is much more of trying to find your purpose through your work. And that's where I think um, that ties to values and seeking out, are we doing what we say we're going to do? I don't think that was uh, you know I don't know, 20, 30 years ago, I don't think you had as many people saying, what's my purpose, or
mm,
looking for that values alignment, as much as so it's a good thing that we're looking for that, and it's holding leaders to do what, in many cases, what's right for the company, for the people, and maybe for the society as well, the community. So there's more stakeholders than
mm.
there have been in the past.
Yeah, good input. Good input. Like, The title of your new book, the Mirrored Door, correct?
Mhm. Yes.
I just grabbed this definition because and I'd love to get you to unpack this because I think it's fantastic. So, the mirrored door is that invisible barrier that we aren't even aware of necessarily. The point in our careers where, when presented with opportunities, many women reflect inward and hesitate, deem we're not ready or worthy enough to move forward, whether that is to raise their hand or apply for the next role. What spurred you to write your book and also that concept of the mirrored door? Because I personally hadn't heard of that concept. I'd heard of the glass ceiling concept before,
Yeah.
but yeah, the mirrored door has me really intrigued.
Yeah. So it actually occurred in my new role. I'm heading up women's leadership programming, a shift from the business world into academia. And I was at an orientation for new MBA students, all excited. And there was a female keynote speaker, a CEO, sharing her career experience. And she finishes up her talk and opens it up for questions. And all the hands that shot up were men and no women. And in that auditorium, it was about a third women. And I was kind of shocked because I know to get into this school, these are, women late 20s. To get into this school, you have to be really smart and have done a lot in your 20s. So I know that they were impressive, but in that auditorium, they were quiet. And that was sort of the start of like this puzzling thing. And then as I asked more, I started to see trends across schools, across business schools, in the research of it's not just raising your hand in an auditorium first day of school, but also in the classroom, also not going towards jobs. So there was a classic study of going for a promotion or a new job, and women seeing the list of the 10 criteria needed, and having some of them, or having 6 of them, and saying I'm not ready, and men having less and saying I got this.
Mm,
So good for them, because it's a company's wish list. So there's all this other there was a recent research study where scientists in a lab, female scientists, held back their answers even when they knew that they were right. But
wow.
in a lab situation where men were predominantly known to have that skill, these women had that too, but they held back. So there was this dynamic as I looked into this, and I saw in myself too. I would get on a new board, and it was a new industry for me, and I didn't speak up early enough. I was playing the observer,
Mm.
and so I think it's rooted in certain earlier behaviors that lead us to believe we need to be perfect, or we need to please everyone. So I want to hold back from rocking the boat or raising the conflict, like kind of what we talked about earlier, and some other strategies that I see. And I think so often we learned and we're rewarded for those things, and they help us in our career until they start to get us to question ourselves. And it's so often a really distorted view. So my metaphor of the mirrored door was this idea of reflecting inward instead of moving forward into action, that maybe is a little imperfect, maybe we're uncertain, but all the growth comes from taking that action. It's on the other side of the door.
Mm. Fantastic. I love that. First of all, I love that story too. It's having done a little bit of lecturing myself here in Melbourne. Yeah, you do see that trend, which and now that I was saying to you, but before we hit record, having young daughters myself, I'm constantly thinking, and it's really brought that it's really kind of stirred my attention to ensure that as a parent that I'm encouraging them to put their hand up. I'm encouraging them to dare to be great. I'm encouraging them to make mistakes, learn from them, and things like that.
Climb trees.
Yeah, exactly. Climb trees,
Yeah.
climb the monkey bars. Dad's here if
Yeah.
you need me, but give it a crack yourself. um, how do you go about kind of shifting that mindset in a lot of the young women that you work with? Like, what do you see? Is there like a consistent light bulb moment that you notice with working with your students? Like, can you kind of talk to us about that? Because I think we get a lot of educators listening, and also people that work with young women with lots of potential, and no doubt they want to try and help them to strive towards their best.
Yeah, I think first it's becoming aware how these things that make us successful can also sideline us.
The
So,
double-edged sword.
yeah, it's the double-edged sword. And I've identified 5 of these strategies: preparing to perfection, eagerly pleasing, fitting the mold, pushing pedal to the metal, and performing patiently. And so identifying how they help me, because we do them because they have worked. And then we get to a point where expectations rise as we move up in our careers, or it even changes when we go from the academic world into the workplace that feels so different. There's no rubric telling us that just hard work and applying ourselves can get it done. There's all kinds of other gray area. And so to move into action is kind of understanding. So, for example, preparing to perfection, we deliver excellently, on time, on budget. People count on us. We might be the star earlier in our career. And over time, that being perfect makes us less able to make the decision with less time preparing. And that's what happens when you move up in your career. So perhaps we're not delegating enough because we got to make it perfect and only we can do that, or we're not deciding. And there becomes a lot of stress. I There's a term here, FOMO, fear of missing out. My belief is there is a FOMO, fear of messing up, that
Oh,
is
I love
really
that.
strong,
Yep.
that it's sort of like, I have this sterling reputation and I don't want to let go of that. So you asked me about what do you do about this. And it's really about taking small steps in ways that you would consider are less than perfect and with uncertainty, and asking for help. So it could look like going into your boss and taking your list of to-dos, and let's make a column of what are the things that I should deliver in that A plus manner, and what are the things that I can just come in with a rough draft, even though I might feel really uncomfortable because I want to have it, all ready with a bow on it. Um, and what things maybe do you drop, or really like get to that later? So you're differentiating and really knowing, when do I go all out and spend more preparation time? So some of it's that type of thing, but it's also asking for help, and that could be delegating and doing more coaching to help someone else step into you're basically taking away someone else's opportunity if you take it all on yourself. And so it's a series of small steps that get you more comfortable in making a decision with not all the data that you used to have. And it's helping you also to understand that you likely know the framework, you know how to think about things. You probably don't need to do the amount as you grow in an organization and rise. You got to make decisions with less information than you used to have, and getting more comfortable with that, because that's the thing. What can happen perceptually is that someone comes off and is considered like, she's kind of a worker bee. I want her on the team, but I'm not sure about leading the team. And so it's a series of like, understand the implications on your own self, the stress of FOMO, or the perceptual risk, and then trying different things in lower stakes environments so that you get more prepared and learn, I can figure this out.
Mm.
And in each strategy, the solution is something about taking action. with someone eagerly pleasing, which is that liked shift into respect is one of the things, but it's also boundary setting. So I have some steps in the book about how can you find something small and set a boundary, say no, or set a boundary. So in each one, the pivot is really around action that goes against what you're used to in small ways.
So what I'm hearing is that quite often a lot of the attributes, skills, characteristics that served an individual quite well in the early stages of the career, when they step into those leadership roles and embracing those areas when they move further up their career ladder, it's almost like they have to unlearn some of those behaviors to be able to be the best leader that they can be. And that's particularly, I suppose, ramped up for women, because I suppose from what, as you said, the research suggests that quite often women prefer to have that, all their boxes ticked before they do apply for that promotion or that pursuit of perfection. And I see that a lot in my female friends too. Like they have this drive for perfection, a lot more than I feel like a lot of my male friends do. That's just my own small observation, but I think it's a really good point you raise.
Yeah, I mean, I think we hold ourselves, you are right. We hold ourselves to these sky high expectations that early on we could almost deliver. High achieving women can deliver on those, but it changes with the workload, with life getting in the way. And I agree with you that it can be true early in our careers, but I would also say later in our careers too. I use myself as an example. I accomplish all the stuff that gets me into the boardroom, and then I think, I don't know this industry. I better hold back. And so the solution, and I truly do this, is I do prepare in the time that I can, and then I tap into my courage that I might say something that is, I doubt it's going to be stupid, but it's probably flat, something that's not great. But I said, I'm going to speak up early, and I'm going to speak up 3 times in this meeting. And,
So you set that
like,
action before the meeting.
yeah, so before the meeting,
Yep.
and what happens in meetings and in classrooms, it's easier to speak up early before all the good answers are taken. I can tell you that as a teacher, speak up early.
Speak up early.
If any of your audience are in any kind of school program, whatever the first answer is, the professor will work with that.
Yep.
And an idea might be, maybe it's not brilliant, but it might spark someone else's idea, and you're also more visible too. But when we hold ourselves to, I can only speak up if I know this is going to be a perfect, brilliant answer, then too often we hold back, and boy, it works against us. It really does. When the more we can act and raise our hand, raise our voice, go for the next job, and show up as we truly are, that the happier we'll be over time, and the more we'll get used to, I can do this and I've survived. And maybe I'll even, it helps us to arrive and thrive, like the name of your podcast.
Love that. Nice little
Yeah.
pun there, Ellen. Fantastic. Yeah, it's such a good point. Another thing I'd love to, I suppose, explore is if we've got listeners who identify as women, who are looking for that next kind of role, that either leadership position or that step up into into the next promotion, and they're wrestling with that imposter syndrome a little bit. What advice would you give in terms of like any reflections or any questions they should be asking themselves to, as you said, like take care and then take charge?
Yeah. I like that you brought it back to take care and take charge, because so often that inner critic, or what I call the inner antagonist, is there initially to protect us, but it prevents our growth. so often. And so becoming really aware of what is it, what is that message? What's that critical message that is so often, I'll call it like, what's your greatest hits of that voice, whether it's like, you're not good enough, or, who are you to do this, or whatever those things are. And really getting curious about that. And is that how you would talk to your friend or your family member? Probably not. And so you're not really taking care of yourself if you believe that.
Mm.
So it's a bit of whether it's journaling or understanding, bringing self-awareness to what is that critical voice, and creating what's the opposite of that. And, what I call it, like, what's the protagonista voice in your head, or what could you implant in there. So if it's, who are you to go after this job, or to speak with authority on this topic, it's sort of what's a quick shorthand way to say, why not me? And trying to shift your thinking more so to that. I also think getting feedback and allies around you are ways to help you with this. So you could get feedback on, um, what's working for you, or where you're getting in your own way, or you could have an ally who you work with who can give you feedback on, like, I'm feeling like I said something really stupid in that meeting, or I feel like I shouldn't go for that job. What is getting some objective uh, information from other people is also a way to start to inject reality, because that inner antagonist is a distorted view. It really is. And we go there too often. So we have to create countermeasures. And that's through what's the opposite of that is in your voice, that's motivating, and how might you check out and get some reality into the way your mind is working.
Mm. Fantastic. I love that pun you said that before around what are the hit singles that are playing through your
Oh, yeah, yeah,
your
the greatest
mind.
hit.
Yeah, the greatest hits, because we
You
all.
can also, like, tie them to something that has happened in the past, or something you
Yeah.
felt early on. Like, so much of this starts early in school or family, or, we get messages from media too that make us think we're less than,
Mm.
and we're really not.
Mm. And it's about, I suppose, as you said, like finding that evidence, seeking that feedback to go, well, even though that hit single is playing, it doesn't mean that
Yeah.
it's the best song that I should be listening to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
I like that evidence. Because we so easily find confirming
Mm.
evidence and stack up, here's all the reasons why, I can't do that. And it's sort of like, force yourself with the discipline of what's the disconfirming evidence, or the confirming evidence of why you should go for it.
Yes. Yeah. Fantastic. Ellen, it's been a pleasure chatting with you today. One question that we always ask all of our listeners is what are you roaring about? So I'll just play Dan's little theme music to honour him.
Taco.
Taco. I'm roaring.
I'm brewing. I'm soaking it up.
Taco, just thought I'd drop in with a little late night surprise for you.
I'm not sure if you can hear the sizzling. I'm just sort of stewing on that.
I'm roaring.
So, Ellen, what are you roaring about? I should frame it up for listeners. When we do video calls, our guests can't actually hear the theme music, so it's totally fine. Ellen, you were like looking at me going, "Is it now time for me to speak?" So I appreciate the the empathy on that one. What are you roaring about at the moment?
I am roaring about our fall season. So I live in Chicago.
Yep.
And in the United States, in the fall, the trees, the leaves turn different colors.
Yep.
And what they've just done in the last week is they issue these maps of like what's the ideal time to see the color change. And so
Oh,
we're plotting out our trips to Michigan, which is close to us, where it's just so beautiful. So that was something that we just did over the weekend, looking at like, oh, we can go there the week
yep.
of October 15th, right after the book launch. So that's what I'm worrying about right now.
Fantastic. I love that. And I think Dan would love that too, because he was a real big nature buff. So it's fantastic that we've got a little bit of nature in this episode, because we get a similar turn of seasons here in Victoria, in Melbourne, where I live. But you have to, similar to I think what you're talking about, you have to go to certain spots to really see the beautiful color change
Yeah.
that occurs.
Great time for a fall hike.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for listeners who have tuned in, what's one way that they can see your updates, get a copy of the book? The book is out now online, correct?
It's available for pre-order right now,
Fantastic.
but available October 10th in the US, and I believe early November in Australia.
Fantastic.
And I am pretty active on LinkedIn, so that's a great place to follow me. And my website, Ellen Taaffe, spelled TAAFFE.com/book, goes over all the information about the book. And I have articles and resources and a few freebies on there as well. So we'd be happy to have people connect with me there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your insights. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.